Hi there, Sagittarius. Thank you for joining me for your year 2015 forecast. And it does begin with a major alteration because right at the very end of 2014, Saturn, the planet of structure, relocated into your sign. Now this is going to be passing through Sagittarius for the next 2.5 years. It's a very important transit. Now if you know your astrology, you'll know that Saturn does have rather a dark reputation. A reputation for being the planet of limitation and creating frustration and obstacles. But Saturn is also a teacher, and sometimes the way it imparts its lessons is rather strict, but we can gain from it. And the big lesson for you this year is about the issue of simplification, of trying to make your life just a little bit more focused on the things that are truly essential. Now for someone like you who has a big vision, lots of friends, lots of different themes going on in your situation, that is not always easy. And also the first few degrees that Saturn is going to be working through are ruled by your ruler Jupiter, so it's a double Jupiterian influence. So what we're getting here is Saturn restrictive on the planet of growth. So how does that work? It can create a lot of frustration. Yet ironically, Jupiter, in its transiting sense, is actually working for the first half of this year and more through a very growth-orientated part of your horoscope. And at the very start of the year forges a brilliant opposition with Mars. And when it comes to your ideas, propagating them or perhaps learning new ones, potentially through formal education, or if you're interested in buying and selling, especially overseas, you can enter 2015 with a real sense of optimism. And also this is aided by the fact that Mercury and Venus are tightly together at the start of the year, and your cash register, your personal cash register, could well ring up nicely for you. But there are some challenges too. Not least that Pluto and Uranus are going to be squaring up for 7 months this year, the first 5 and last 2 months of the year. Now this points towards being very aware of your resources and how you use them. Now consumption is something that Pluto has been pushing you towards in the last 7 years. And if you have been a very happy shopper and found that retail therapy, good food, good wine, all these things have been enormously attractive to you, then this may be the year when you need to start to grapple with getting much more focused on things that are much more deeply important. And some of these things may not even be obvious to you at the start of the year because the way Saturn works and the lessons it imparts are not necessarily automatic. We have to work through it, and sometimes things can change in a way that we're not expecting. Unfortunately, none of us has complete control over our environment. So however up you are for the challenge in terms of making New Year's resolutions and feeling that you want to go for it in 2015, just be aware that the foundations of your world are going to be crucially important. And you start to get that message even more on the back of a solar eclipse which occurs on the 20th of March. One which is in the part of your horoscope to do with your emotional health, your family life, where you live. Now if you're looking to start a family, this can be wonderful in the next 6 months, but it may mean that some of the things that you used to be interested in will fade into the background. Or if you're much more of a gregarious character, you might be surprised by finding at times that you don't want to be hanging out with all the people out there. This comes from the lunar eclipse which occurs on the 4th of April, and instead you're much more attuned to people who can provide sincerity and who are really good for you at a more heart level. So I do think this can be a year when quantity is going to become much less important than quality. Now whilst that may always be true, we do live in an era of social media where a lot of people are always keen to gather new friends in terms of Facebook and so on. But I think that's going to start to alter for you. This consumption that you've been going through in recent years is going to make way for a new beginning where you need to simplify your existence to some great degree. Now your ruler Jupiter is twisting backwards at the start of this year, and by April the 8th it starts to go forwards. And it is still going to be pushing you to be explorative, adventurous, and also inquisitive. But at the same time, you need to make sure that this all works for you. So you can go out in certain ways into the world and engage, but at the same time it needs to be for a meaningful reason. If it's just cruising because it's just great to engage with lots of different concepts and people and travel just for the fun of it, I do think that's going to lose its appeal somewhat. There needs to be a tangible motive behind your exploration. Now, Saturn is going to be in your sign until the middle of June, but by the middle of September, but from the middle of June through to the middle of September, it does switch back into the more psychological part of your horoscope. And you may find yourself having to think again about certain associations. Part of the reason for this is that Saturn has 3 sweeps in retrograde. So it's now entering the last journey or last phase through the sign of Scorpio, but it's because it started a retrograde earlier in 2015. Now, once it emerges back into Sagittarius in the middle of September, you really will be ready to take on the challenge that this planet is going to lay down to you. But another alteration which occurs in August sees Jupiter, your ruler, move signs. It moves out of the fire sign of Leo, which basically you've just loved, and it moves into the part of your scope that's to do with obligations and responsibilities. Now, if you are somebody who does want to take on more of these, and you're keen to make progress in terms of your professional interest, then if you really work hard in the following 12 months, there's every chance that Jupiter will see you end up in the boardroom, but you're going to have to play the game of life. And sometimes that means conforming to conventions, something you don't always find easy to do. You can be very outspoken, blunt. You will have your say. You just see it as being frank and truthful. Other people can see it as being much more intimidating. And you need to be aware, with the extra confidence that Jupiter will give you in the sign of Virgo, that precision will be important. It's no good for you just having that opinion or trying to galvanize people with your ideas. You need to organize your opinion in a meaningful way which is tangible for other people. If you do this, you can do well. September will be a challenge in this regard. There's also a solar eclipse, a lunar eclipse, which once more are going to test your mettle in terms of friendships and your future prospects, because there is at the end of March a period of time that begins which is really asking you to think much more closely about the emotional foundations of your world, and it's something you often resist. And the reason for that is because you love the big picture. The minutiae of life bores you. You don't want to be picking over what didn't work out. You want to be going on to the next exciting adventure. But unfortunately, this can see you absorbing a lot of emotional stuff that's unresolved. And certainly around friendships or your future direction, the 2 eclipses which occur in March the 20th and on April the 4th suggest that some people could start to go out of your life, some people who in the past seem to be very important to you, because you're setting new priorities with the help of Saturn. And once you get around to September, you're going to have to really grapple with that even more, because there's an air of unreality as Jupiter is opposed by Neptune, which could prove very confusing about what you want from life, and in terms of balancing your home situation and your emotional needs and also your professional ones. But once you get to October, you can start to make a bit more sense of it. Jupiter then forges a fantastic link with Pluto, and if you have been working enormously hard behind the scenes for a long time, suddenly you can get a breakthrough financially which can be one which can be truly long-lasting, and that can give you a lot of confidence. But just be aware that there could be some more challenging moments from the middle of November to the early part of December as Saturn squares up to Neptune, and this can be a very depleting influence, suggesting that you're just starting to get used to how Saturn can ask you to just very much focus. So, as much as you often have that worldly view, that tremendous enthusiasm and optimism, You really do need to become much more conscious of what is truly important this year. If you can do that, you will surf the energy of Saturn very well indeed. Thank you for joining me, wishing you good luck. And remember, you can tune in weekly and monthly to my videos to fill in the detailed elements that I'm not able to cover in a year's forecast. Thank you and goodbye.